you got shut out against the Jaguars, extending one of those unfortunate streaks that they carry in the NFL where you haven't beat a division opponent in such and such years. For the Colts, that hasn't been since 2014 against the Jaguars team that at points in their history, points in their recent history, have been among the worst in the NFL. And the Colts still, for whatever reason, just can't beat them. And thought this year was going to be different, right? It was all Carson Wentz's fault in week 17, week 18, when everything went to hell. So we bring in Matt Ryan, we bring in the dead corpse. What are we calling him? The dying corpse?
The rotting corpse of Matt Ryan.
Corpse of Matt Ryan. Yes, we're bringing in Matt Ryan to huck up 3 interceptions. Clearly, this is not what the organization was picturing when they brought in the veteran quarterback. And it's their, 5th quarterback in 5 years, 6th quarterback in 6 years. Talk about unfortunate streaks. That's one of the worst ones there, that they have a rotation of starting quarterbacks. Next year, who knows what it's going to be? Is it going to be Sam Ehlinger? Is he going to get the shot? It's going to be Hook'em season there, or are they going to have to get in another veteran?
I want to play this game now because this is the funny part about the Colts. We'll talk more about the team seriously, but it's not just that they've had 6 quarterbacks in 6 years. Apart from the one Andrew Luck season, it's been the same quarterback, just in different forms. It was 38-year-old Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz 2 years past his prime, Matt Ryan 4 years past his prime, Jacoby Brissett. It's basically just the same rotating panel of quarterback. Next, it's going to be Tannehill. Next, it's going to be Baker Mayfield. Next, it's going to be insert coordinate Jimmy Garoppolo. It's going to be the same rotating panel of shitty quarterbacks that they're not terrible, but they're also just past their expiration dates boring. Then it's going to be Kirk Cousins. It's past their expiration date, and it's just the same quarterback. And the beauty of the Colts is that they have 3 players who are legitimately the best at their position in the NFL. And that's the thing that's always going to keep them stable, whereas they've had total instability at the quarterback position.
You know what I think it is? I think it's because Shaq Leonard changed his name to Shaq Leonard. I think it put a bad juju on this team. That's what happened. You can't mess with what's bringing you good luck, right? No. The fact they haven't had Shaq Leonard on the field actually has been a bigger storyline for them. He's been injured, so that sucked for them. Jonathan Taylor has been out there, but just not as efficient as Jonathan Taylor is expected to be. Certainly, if you drafted him number 1 overall in fantasy. Their wide receiving corps, Michael Pittman missed week 2. Paris Campbell couldn't fill in. No one could fill in. I just don't know how they had no answer for what the Jaguars were doing on defense. The Jaguars aren't
offense either.
The Jaguars aren't a killer on defense. I mean, I think that they're making improvements. I think the Jaguars are heading in the right direction. We all see it. We all see what Doug Peterson and that team is doing. But for the Colts, now you're looking at this because, again, they tried to pin the blame on Carson Wentz last year. That's what Jim Irsay was saying, that all of this was because instability at the quarterback position. Carson Wentz was that guy. Now you got Matt Ryan, and, would you rather have Carson Wentz? Because say what you want about Carson, because I'm starting to kind of change my tune on him. I think he gets too much hate. Carson Wentz, last year, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. This year, you look at the stats. Okay, yes, they lost to Detroit. Maybe Detroit is an ascending team. Who knows? But Detroit, he put up good numbers. He put up good numbers in week 1. And if you look at it from a fantasy football standpoint, he's quarterback 2 currently at this point. So he's putting up numbers. You compare that to what Matt Ryan did. Again, 0 points on the scoreboard, 3 interceptions. Would you rather have had Carson Wentz, who's at least a younger quarterback, at least someone that has been elite in the past? Maybe you could extrapolate that one more time if you're Frank Reich. Or would you just bank on a guy, like you said, with Matty Ice? No disrespect. I think Matt Ryan is a Hall of Famer. I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that one. But when I think about, he's led multiple teams to NFC championship games. He's been an MVP. Those are all things that a guy like Phillip Rivers can't say, So I think that Matt Ryan should be considered in the history of the game. I'm sorry. It's the truth. If I was to rank who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, Matt Ryan is above Phillip Rivers and might be above Eli Manning, who has 2 rings. So no, Matt Ryan's above Eli Manning, but Phillip Rivers has more passing touchdowns than Dan Marino. You shut your mouth on Phillip Rivers. Only because in every game he's behind and trying to come back, and now Kirk Cousins has took his place. Anyway. This is about the Colts, and when I think about the Colts, I just think mediocre. I just think of
you think of Phillip Rivers flailing on his back after an interception to end their season in 2020.
That summarizes it. They're a team truly in a spiral. It's a vicious, endless cycle for the Colts and their fans because they have a good roster too, man. They have a roster that we all looked at and said, okay, if they just had a quarterback. Well, the math is against them right now. So we had 14 teams make the playoffs last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Out of those 14 teams, how many of them started with 0-2 record? Answer, none of them. Zilch, nada. The Colts were close, to breaking like a streak of 0-3 teams that have not made the playoffs. Last year, they started 0-3 and managed to like be there at the tail end of the season. In fact, if they just didn't, again, have the improbable loss, they're in the playoffs. Yeah.
But the Colts were better than 3 of the teams in the AFC that made the playoffs last year. I firmly believe that the Colts were better than 3 of the teams that made the playoffs in the AFC last year.
And at that point, whose fault is it? You could only point in one direction, and that's Frank Reich, right? Who do you point to and not say it's Frank Reich? Or unless you're saying it's Chris Ballard.
I don't know if it's Chris anyone's fault for... He's tried in certain ways. Like once Andrew Luck's retirement puts you in a difficult position, but that only buys you like 2 years. Like after that, you just kind of got the rotating cast. And you were having the Carson Wentz versus Matt Ryan conversation beforehand, and I'll jump in on that because, the Colts basically, if you look at it in hindsight, they gave up Carson Wentz for Matt Ryan and a 3rd round pick was basically the trade. They got Matt Ryan for Carson Wentz and a 3rd round pick. He got sent for a 3rd rounder to Washington. They gave up 2 3rd rounders to get Matt Ryan and took on the contract. But the reason that was the case was just because everyone in the locker room was happy to see Carson Wentz go. And I don't know how much credibility there is to the reports of he wouldn't take coaching well and him and Frank Reich didn't jibe, but like everyone was happy to see Carson Wentz go. And they were deciding we cannot let him walk back into the locker room because everyone except his anti-vax brother, Shaq Leonard, hates him. And so Carson Wentz leaving was more so that, and we'll just slide in Matt Ryan, who like statistically last year was a better quarterback than Carson Wentz, but like the year before that, in 2019, Carson Wentz was a better statistical quarterback than Matt Ryan. So like they kind of just flip-flop as Matt Ryan ages out and Carson Wentz is probably on his last team as an NFL starter. I think that from this point forward, Carson Wentz will be kind of in the Teddy Bridgewater role for the next 5 years of his career. But like, either way, they're not really any different. Like the Colts still can't move the football offensively. And this was a problem at the end of last year with Wentz, but then Wentz would sometimes have 3 touchdowns and eventually they just said, give the ball to Jonathan Taylor and let him go berserk because he's the best running back in the NFL. And I mean, you're obviously a fantasy football guy. I can't comprehend how someone can be a fantasy football expert when Jonathan Taylor at halftime has 5 carries for 4 yards against the Jaguars. Like, I don't understand how fantasy football works where that's even a possibility given everything we think we know about the Colts and Jonathan Taylor.
And everything we think we know about the Jaguars. New coach, rebuilding themselves. The Colts aren't rebuilding. They shouldn't be rebuilding. They should look at their team
for the
and
Jaguars.
Think of themselves. Okay. Yeah, go with the Jaguars real quick.
Yeah. I've spent all week. So this is actually the first time on this show that I've talked about the Colts. So I have a lot of Jaguars stats in my bank because I've spent all week talking about how excellent the Jaguars were versus how everyone else, I assume, I assume everyone on like ESPN or Sports Talk is the story coming out of Colts Jaguars is what's wrong with the Colts instead of what's good with the Jaguars. In a week where Tua had 475 yards and 6 touchdowns and Lamar Jackson had 120 QBR and Kyler Murray did what Kyler Murray did, who had the best passer rating in the NFL on short to intermediate throws? That's right. It was Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was the best passer in the NFL on short to intermediate throws. And this is the first time since pre-pandemic he's had stability. So I think what the Jaguars did, indictment of the Colts, of course, but also something the Jaguars can replicate almost every single week during the season. Not Trevor Lawrence being best in the NFL good, but good enough to get 17 points. And if their defense plays well, they can win some 17-14 slugfests. And in an AFC South where I personally believe the Bills should win the AFC South and AFC East and then get to play double elimination in the playoffs, the AFC South, the Jaguars could mess around and get the 4 seed. I don't know, like believe in Jacksonville because they actually have stability. And stability is good enough to have Trevor Lawrence look like a quarterback that's worth $250 million in 30 games.
I don't dog on the AFC South like you dog on the AFC South, but I will say after the Bills teabagged the Titans like they did, I have to give you your due. That was a good one. That was good. Fist bump. But listen here with the Colts, this is not a team in rebuilding mode. They were a team that had a roster that said to themselves, we can win with this roster. And the fact that the quarterback is not the right answer brings up a next question of, do you enter rebuild? I just don't know how you do that, how you go about doing that if you are the Colts, because, you know, you have guys like Buckner and you have Shaq and you have Quenton Nelson, you know, Jonathan Taylor, these legitimate studs, all-stars at their positions. You know, these are guys that with the right quarterbacking can get you over. But the only answer at that point is, well, you're not going to be high enough in the draft to get a rookie. You know, one of these talented rookies coming out, Stroud or Young. So do you have to look, again, as silly as it sounds, the veteran quarterback route? And the only veteran quarterbacks that really make you significantly better are like, can you convince Aaron Rodgers to come out?
Well, that's
you know?
okay. That's the pipe dream. That's the pipe dream. But when we talk about veteran quarterbacks, we're talking about guys on the fringe, right? So we're talking about Derek Carr. We're talking about Matthew Stafford. We're talking about Kirk Cousins. We're talking about maybe, Dak Prescott's going to be on the Cowboys for a while, but like people of that ilk. So if you check out my podcast, Take It Easy, available wherever you get podcasts, we did a podcast this week about how the Tennessee Titans should follow the Eagles model, where the Eagles traded Carson Wentz and for 2 years didn't tank like worst in the league tank, but tanked enough to get like blue chip prospects. The Titans should do that with Derrick Henry, trade him to the Los Angeles Rams, F them picks, go Rams, get Derrick Henry. That would be really fun. They should do that with Henry, turn the team over to Malik Willis the way the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts, and just spend the next 2 years trying to get blue chip prospects and with top 10 draft picks. And I think the Colts, like, I know they're in the same division, but that same kind of idea could work for Indianapolis. I'm not saying it's the greatest idea in the world, because unlike the Titans, the Colts don't just have 4 very good players. They have 4 great players. Shaq Leonard, Quenton Nelson, Jonathan Taylor, and DeForest Buckner are great players. Like, if 3 of them are for sure the best at their position. DeForest Buckner, you could argue if he's the best defensive tackle behind Aaron Donald, but like, those are 4 great players that the Colts have. And obviously Jonathan Taylor could get you first round picks and value. Like, maybe trading one of them is a possibility to like help jumpstart whatever transitional phase you might have. If I'm picking one, I'm picking Taylor because he might have the best value, but I just don't know what the answer is for the Colts.
Does Frank Reich make it through this year?
Depends, because I still think they're going to win the AFC South. 2 games is not enough for me to jump off them winning the AFC South, given how more shit the Titans are than I thought, and the Texans are going to have the number 1 pick in the draft. So like, they might still win the division, but like, it depends on what the direction of the franchise is. I don't know about that.
I will contest you on the Texans being the number 1 pick in the draft. I think they're a scrappy enough team that they won't finish with the number 1 pick in the draft.
I just can't find any other team. That's the problem, is I can't find any other team that's worse than them. Like,
I don't know. Are the Bears going to win another game this year?
Bears probably will win. The Texans genuinely could lose every game.
We're losing sight, but okay, you still think there's a chance that the Colts can win this division. I don't see the same Colts team that can, but you know, they started slow last year. They had a streak last year. They just couldn't finish. They couldn't put the ball over the goal line to like carry home the season to the playoffs. So you know what? I'll leave it up to you in the comment section. What do you think of the Colts? But anyway, guys, just drop below your thoughts on the Colts and what they should do next in the comment section. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media at Juju Talk Sports, at Kyle Ledbetter 619, something along that. Either way, it's in the description. Follow that below, folks. Stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you in the next time.